Hello and welcome back to the final game of this top 16 of the Victory Road Spring Series Grand Finals. I'm going to be joined for the last time today by Ben Kiriakou once again, and we're going to be jumping into the very final game of this top 16 between Giuseppe Alario and Simone Sanvito.
We certainly are, and I've been looking forward to this game all day. Simone is one of the players that I really enjoy watching. I had the pleasure of playing him in several top cuts over the last, I'd say a few years ago now, back when top cuts were a thing in person, and he's a great player, a great guy to play against. We are unfortunately having a couple of little bits of technical difficulty connecting these players, so I'm afraid we are going to have a little bit of a wait before these players get started playing, but we have been assured they're trying to connect, and we'll be back with you, or we'll be with you, for the game as soon as possible. But in the meantime, I guess it would be a good idea for us to just do a little poll very quickly, just to see who you guys off the cuff think that is going to be taking this one home and going into your top 8. We've of course got Simone versus Giuseppe coming up on your screen right now. Guys, get your votes into the chat using those exclamation mark commands, and support these players in the final game of today. We've had a long one. We've had lots of things going on. It's been absolutely fantastic, but you know, these players have been waiting patiently. They're ready to give you a show, and I'm sure we're all going to see a fantastic finale to day one of this Victory Road Circuit Spring Series Championship.
Yeah, and it looks like somewhat of an even split once again, but Giuseppe seems to be making somewhat of a push on Simone here for the poll. Quite surprising to see. We saw such an even split between everyone else in the top 8, but real push for Giuseppe here, against Simone. So very interesting to see all the supports more one-sided this time than in the previous matches that we've seen.
Yeah, I think maybe a few fans of Giuseppe coming out to support him, which is fantastic to see, but definitely not Simone, not one to count out so soon. I think this is going to be one of those matches where you can see Simone just going and being quite consistent in the way that he plays. He's had so much experience in top cuts that, you know, really, really looking forward to seeing how he's approaching this format. So, yeah, I think it's gonna be a good one to see for sure.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Really interesting to see what kind of teams are going to be coming out from both of these players. Seems like Simone comes out with the very tried and true Pokemon, so that he knows what is going to be working and always picking those very strong Pokemon. But for now, we're going to be looking at Giuseppe's team to start us off with, and definitely going to be a very offensive team coming out here for Giuseppe with that Dracovish that we haven't seen for a little while. And another niche pick coming out for Giuseppe, as well as that Indeedee male coming out. So two very unique Pokemon for Giuseppe in this top 16, paired with that Spectria, Thunderous, Regieleki, and Whimsicott here. So that's good achievements coming out for Giuseppe as well, getting runner-up in 2 of the qualifiers for the Victory Road, 1 in the Winter Series and 1 in the Spring Series, as well as getting runner-up in the 2020 Battle Dome.
Yeah, indeed, and I think it's one of these sort of teams where you look at and you go a little bit, go fast or go home, really kind of approaches to building a team. You've got Whimsicott there with Tailwind potential, you've got the Thunderous there. Depends on whether it's Prankster and Defiant. We've seen only Prankster today so far with William Tansley's team, but you know, if that's a Prankster Thunderous, it is going to be carrying, or the opportunity to carry Thunder Wave, and that would do very well for being able to get alongside Whimsicott with a Tailwind, making sure that Dracovish is going to be able to launch its Vicious Rends first rather than last and do that damage that it's so well known for, alongside Strong Jaw, boosting it even further. And of course, Trick Room, not really a problem either with that Indeedee coming out onto the field. Really known for using Imprison and Trick Room on the same set to just shut down Trick Room complete. Don't have to knock out Pokemon, don't have to taunt them, don't even have to think about, reversing your own Trick Room or reversing their Trick Room with your own. Just hit the Imprison button. It's not going up that game. So, like to see those sort of techs. But moving on to Simone, unfortunately, we don't have a feed for him. His internet's a little bit shaky, so we're told. So, I'm not going to be able to see him. Instead, just supporting that substitute on the camera in true fashion.
Yeah, and we're going to be running that team of Regieleki, Grimmsnarl, Spectria, Galarian Moltres, Landorus, Therian, and Registeel. So another Registeel that does seem to be picking up somewhat in popularity. I think that's at least 3 of the players in the top 16 that have brought the Registeel to this top 16. And of course, there's achievements there, being the champion of one of the spring qualifiers, as well as the champion of an international championship back in the 2017 European International, and also getting a runner-up in the 2016 regionals and a top 16 at the Pokemon World Championships. So a very accomplished player coming out here for Simone.
Definitely, and I think that's the 3rd, maybe 4th Registeel that we've seen in this top 16 bracket. So really is quite popular as far as something that could be a niche pick goes. So looking forward to seeing that. Likely going to be a similar sort of body press, double setup defenses with Iron Defense and potentially Amnesia, depending on how it's run. But that Galarian Moltres as well, another bulky Pokemon. We've got Landorus that's able to just switch things around a little bit. And of course, we have that Grimmsnarl with the light clay there that loves to just put up reflex and light screens and just stop your opponent from doing too much damage. So it's going to be one of those matchups with Giuseppe on your screen there running quite an offensive team versus Simone running a team that can be definitely very offensive, but equally isn't afraid to take a few hits.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup here with the team that wants to do as much damage as possible against a team that wants to reduce the damage as much as possible, whether that's those screens from the Grimmsnarl or setting up with those Iron Defenses on the Registeel. So it may come down to who can put out the most damage, or whether the more offensive team in Giuseppe coming out here can break through the defensiveness that is going to be coming out from Simone's side. So we do have that very supportive Spectria as well. So you do have that classic lead of the Grimmsnarl Spectria that could come out that does want to start reducing the damage that could come out from your opponent's side of the field. And if we are going to be seeing that, then it'll be a little bit more difficult for this very offensive team to break through. But we are seeing at least the Grimmsnarl coming out for Simone's side of the field, paired up with that Landorus, and Regieleki and Spectria is the choice on Giuseppe's side of the field.
Yeah, and a little bit of a sort of triangle going on here. We've got potential Will-O-Wisp coming out from that Spectria, which Landorus doesn't appreciate, but of course Regieleki doesn't appreciate Landorus on the field whatsoever. And Grimmsnarl's just sitting there in the corner going, hey, I can set up Reflect and I can set up Light Screen, and maybe I can fake out Spirit Break and do a little bit of damage, but not really going to be offering too much presence as normally it doesn't. Just going to allow Simone to really do whatever he wants to do with that Landorus. Spectria, though, not wanting to stay on the field at all for Giuseppe, are going to be bringing in that Whimsicott in favour of it, and looks like, is that Simone, I believe, going for a Dynamax right off the bat here.
Yeah, it does seem to be, and it's not the Grimmsnarl once again, unfortunately. It's still just that Landorus going for the Dynamax, but it's definitely going to be very safe here. The Spectria did switch out, so no threat of any moves coming from the Spectria here, and Regieleki's really not going to be able to threaten the Landorus too much at all. We're going to be seeing a scary face coming up from the Grimmsnarl, though.
Yeah, going into that Whimsicott, though, surprisingly, so maybe a little bit of a game plan there coming out from Simone, as an Electro Ball goes into the Grimmsnarl, does a lot of damage there. It does look like a Max Airstream going into that Whimsicott, going to be activating the Cobra Berry. May not be enough. No, Whimsicott does still go down. Cobra Berry not quite enough to deal with a Landorus here, and regardless of what the teams look like on paper, Simone definitely having the more explosive start to this match.
Yeah, for sure. He's got rid of the Tailwind on the Whimsicott on Giuseppe's side of the field, so there's no more options for that, and has got a speed boost on the Landorus with that Max Airstream. Probably not enough to put it faster than that Regieleki, given the fact that it is carrying that Electro Ball. You want to be running your Regieleki as fast as possible to get the most amount of power out of that Electro Ball. But Landorus doesn't really care about that. It doesn't matter that it won't be able to outspeed it. It can't be really affected by the Regieleki at all, and can just go for any of those max quakes. So that's a really good first turn for Simone coming out there. And Dracovish, even if it is choice scarfed at this point, the Landorus would have been airstreaming itself faster than that Dracovish. So really nice turn for Simone coming out here. And yeah, the Grimstar was put very, very low, but able to survive that attack coming out from the Regieleki, and still has the option to just go for another scary face if it wanted, to put that Regieleki slower than the Landorus, so it could guarantee the knockout, and the Grimmsnarl could survive the turn. But then at the same time, you do need to worry about this Dracovish, even if it won't be able to get that double power Fisher's Rend. Fisher's Rent is still a very strong move coming out from the Dracovish, especially the fact that this Dracovish is in fact choice banded, so it would be a lot of damage coming out from the Dracovish, so you still do need to be very wary of that. But it looks like there is going to be a Dynamax coming out for Giuseppe's side of the field. If that is the Regieleki, it would probably want to be going for some of those max strikes that could come out, that we'd be seeing a lot. But instead, it is going to be a Dynamax Dracovish instead. So Dynamaxing out of the choice band. It won't get that boost anymore. It doesn't even get its boost from Strong Jaw coming off the Fisher's Rend, so it's going to have to rely on setting up the rain instead.
It certainly is, and we see what looks like a light screen coming out into play there from the Grimmsnarl. Electro Ball coming out from the Regieleki is going to be enough to finish off that Grimmsnarl, and we spoke a minute ago about a lot of damage. Jamie, you mentioned looks like there's going to be quite a bit of damage going into this Dracovish, but if I'm not mistaken, that Dracovish is going to be able to reply with something just that little bit stronger and a little bit more effective onto that Landorus here. And we do see that. We see the Max Geyser coming out and possibly setting up a little bit more of an end game. This Landorus does get knocked out, which it does survive. Actually, this Landorus actually in a really great position now, even though the rain's on the field, even though Dracovish has got itself going with its Dynamax. Gonna be tough for Giuseppe in front of both a Regieleki and a Landorus that's got some speed boosts to really make an impact in the later turns of this game.
So even if the Regieleki could go for that Hyper Beam to the Landorus to pick up that little bit of extra damage the Dracovish wasn't able to do, the Landorus has gone for 2 airstreams at this point, so almost certainly going to be faster than that Regieleki, and does have the option of just going for that Max Quake to pick up the knockout at this point, or you can opt to go for a double up into the Dracovish if you're not too concerned about the Regieleki, because if it does go for a Hyper Beam, then it has to take that recharge turn next turn. But Landorus does appear to be going for that Max Airstream into the Dracovish, and it's just able to survive.
Yeah, just a few health there, and we'll see how Simone decides to act with his own Regieleki. Looks like an attack into the Dracovish is going to be enough. 6 HP, not surprising at all that Dracovish is going to be returning to Giuseppe. And of course, we do see the Electro Web going into Simone's side of the field from Giuseppe's Regieleki, just bringing Regieleki speed on Simone's side of the field back down to neutral after that Max Airstream boosted it up in the previous turn. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit too late coming out from Giuseppe. Not being able to dispatch that Landorus is a real problem for him. And the Spectria and the Regieleki on Giuseppe's side of the field have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so the Landorus now has access to his spread moves again. Earthquake would definitely be enough to pick up the knockout on the Regieleki on both sides of the field, but you do need to be wary of that. Probably not going to be enough on the Spectria, so it wouldn't matter which Pokemon is in the back for Simone. If it is that Moltres, then he's looking in a very good position, because that would be immune to the Earthquake that the Landorus would want to go for, and would deal with the Spectria very well, but there's no switches coming out here. There's a Protect from Giuseppe's Regieleki.
And Protect from Regieleki on Simone's side of the field. So 2 guesses which move that this Landorus is going for, as we see the Protect proc on Simone's, followed by Giuseppe's Regieleki and the Earthquake coming out onto the field. Not enough to pick up the KO on Spectria, but you know, it's a lot of damage and definitely puts the Spectria on the right side of a KO for Simone. But not coming out is going to be enough to pick up the knockout after Life Orb chips and all of the rest of the damage that Giuseppe's done on Landorus, and that's definitely a problem taken care of for Giuseppe with having Regieleki still on the field after 3 turns of a Dynamax Landorus and an Earthquake. That's pretty impressive. to say the least. But there's still quite a lot for that Regieleki to have to do, especially in front of this Registeel.
Well, if this Registeel only has access to body press as its offensive move, so if the Regieleki on Giuseppe's side of the field is able to move first and allow that Spectria to be able to KO the Regieleki, it may have been able to beat the Registeel because it wasn't able to attack the Spectria, but it seems like Simone's Regieleki was able to move first and take out that Spectria first before that Electro Web from Giuseppe's Regieleki. So it could have come down to how those Regieleki were trained. If Giuseppe's would have moved first, got that Electro Web off, that could have opened up the opportunity for that Spectria to go for the Shadow Ball into the Regieleki and then could just slowly whittle away at this Registeel. But unfortunately for Giuseppe, the Regieleki on Simone's side of the field moved first. And in defense, so I think it was Amnesia actually coming out from the Registeel. Didn't really matter at this point. Yeah, the Registeel probably going to be able to take this game against this lone Regieleki.
Certainly, we could see a critical hit coming out from Regieleki on Giuseppe's side of the field. Definitely could be enough, with Electro Ball being quite powerful, certainly against something slow like Registeel. But it's definitely an uphill battle. Definitely an uphill battle, and it just feels like Giuseppe's not got enough gas in the tank to be able to move through Simone's last two Pokemon.
Yeah, especially because he's opted for that Electro Ball over something like the Thunderbolt. Probably not even enough to KO this Regieleki at this point. We've seen how much the Electro Web does. It's definitely not going to be enough to be able to KO it in one shot. And then you've got the Hyper Beam, which would mean that you can't move the next turn. It is going to be that Electro Ball into the Registeel, but really not doing too much damage at all.
No, and yeah, that Thunderbolt does quite a bit of damage to Giuseppe's Regieleki, and Body Press, even without a boost, is definitely enough to knock out and close the game off. So it's one game to Simone and back to the drawing board to Giuseppe there. Really, I think quite a one-sided game, and I think the offense was on the wrong side of the field, really, looking at team preview. So what do you think that Giuseppe needs to do, Jamie, to really punch through Simone's team a bit more effectively this next game?
Well, we do know that the Spectre does carry Will-O-Wisp on its move pool, and that was a potential to go for on the turn one. The Landorus just went for the Dynamax, went for those Airstreams, and started putting itself faster than the rest of Giuseppe's side of the field. He lost his Whimsicott immediately, so wasn't able to match those Airstreams with the Tailwind. So maybe going for something like a Will-O-Wisp next in this game instead. If that is able to connect, that would really put a stop to the Landorus. And even if you just go for maybe the Whimsicott as a lead instead, that means that you're not switching in to potentially take an Airstream, so you'd be able to get that Tailwind and really put yourself faster than the Landorus, even if it goes for those Airstreams. Because one of the best ways through that Landorus is that Dracovish. If you can somehow position the Dracovish not intimidated and faster than Landorus, then it is going to be able to do a huge amount of damage, or with that choice-banded Vicious Wren. So maybe that's going to be an option that Giuseppe wants to go for here, because you do have the option of either getting that Tailwind to try and put yourself faster than Landorus, or going for the Will-O-Wisp instead to try and put a stop to its damage output. But then at the same time, Simone could just completely switch it up and go with some other strategy instead.
Certainly could, and I think the problem that Giuseppe faced the first game was that scary face on the Grimmsnarl. I definitely knew it was coming and couldn't really do anything about it, but now there is an opportunity to do something about it with that Thunderous coming out. We'll see if that is going to activate the Defiant. I'm gonna pay a little bit more attention this time. The Defiant does come out, and that Thunderous is looking like a really strong contender for this game. And of course, as you mentioned, Jamie, earlier, Whimsicott in the lead does allow it to get that Tailwind up onto the field and get that Thunderous going.
Yeah, and Thunderous is very good against this Landorus Grimmsnarl combination, mainly because of the Intimidate activating the Defiant, but then also if you want to try and speed control it with the Grimmsnarl, that is Scary Face, and that would activate the Defiant once again, which can just be cancelled out. The speed drops can be cancelled out by a Tailwind, so I definitely like this adjustment coming out from Giuseppe, and it looks like he wants to go on the offensive straight away with that Dynamax Whimsicott that's going to be coming out here. Definitely not going to be the Thunderous with that increased stage of attack here, but it's going to be able to go for those airstreams coming out from the Thunderous. Going to be able to do a lot of damage, especially because this is also a Life Orb Thunderous, going to be able to do a significant amount of damage to Simone's side of the field, but going to be responding with a Dynamax of his own. Going to be the Grimmsnarl this time, let's see it, but it's probably going to be that Landorus.
I think it's going to be that Landorus, yeah. I think we're going to be wildly disappointed that there's no Dynamax Grimmsnarl or Gigantamax Grimmsnarl, in fact, coming out onto the field in this top 16. All of these players are better than that, I'm afraid. But we do see was that a Helping Hand that came out from...
It did seem to be, yeah. Yeah, Helping Hand before that Reflect.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, lots of damage. The Reflect being cancelled out by the Helping Hand. Going to go into Landorus with a Max Airstream, raise its speed up, and Simone definitely didn't want to risk that Defiant activation on the Scary Face there. So, doing lots of damage this turn, and yeah, going to be probably putting it in good stead for getting... Oh... Yeah, I was about to say
that's a lot of damage with that critical hit coming up from the rock wall.
Yeah, I was gonna say getting that Dracovish into position later in the game with some max airstreams, but that ain't gonna happen this game. It's just gonna be the Thunderous getting knocked out and a little bit of damage from that Landorus on the recoil of Life Orb. So we still do have Tailwind available to us, though. So you know, where there's a will, there's a way. Let's say.
Well, at least you didn't use up a turn of Tailwind this turn, and you got the extra damage coming out from the Airstream into the Landorus, and now you can go for the Tailwind this turn if you do have that Dracovish waiting in the back, but then at the same time, you haven't dealt with that Grimmsnarl, so if you do go for the Tailwind, the Scary Face can just match that, and then you'd be able to get the attack off with the Landorus before that Dracovish can move. That Max Rockfall coming off a Life Orb from the Landorus, it comes very close to being able to KO that Thunderous, and the critical hit just makes it guaranteed at that point. But then you do have to factor in that Thunderous is taking its own Life Orb chip and would take a little bit of Sand chip as well. But Dracovish is the choice of Pokemon coming in here for Giuseppe. Can go for that Tailwind, but then can easily be countered by that Scary Face that could come out from the Grimmsnarl. So very awkward position for that Dracovish. Does want to be outspeeding that Landorus, but Grimmsnarl is in a position where it would just be able to put a stop to that.
Certainly is, and really the question is whether or not that Landorus is going to be just straight knocking out that Dracovish with combination of Scary Face and to keep the speed in check that we see coming out here from the Grimmsnarl, and just really any Dynamax attack that Simone wants to launch out here. We do see a Moonblast coming out from the Whimsicott here, doing quite a bit of damage to the Grimmsnarl, but not enough to pick up the knockout. Quite like that play, just delaying the Tailwind as long as you can, but Max Quake coming out into the Dracovish is going to be enough to pick up the knockout here. Dracovish not known for being able to take physical hits as well as it can take special hits, certainly, but yeah, not the bulkiest Pokemon out there. Does go back to Giuseppe. Landorus taking just that last little bit of Life Orb damage. And it's really looking quite difficult now for Giuseppe to use any of the resources that he has to good effect.
Yeah, Regieleki is not the Pokemon you want to be bringing in against this Dynamax Landorus, even though it is so low at this point. We did see in the previous game that Dynamax Dracovish was able to survive 2 Life Orb attacks coming out from the Landorus, so could have potentially been a roll there on whether it was able to pick up that KO. But then even if it was, it would have probably been in range of that Sandstorm to do that final bit of damage. So yeah, but then you at least got a Fisher's Rend from the Dracovish before it would have fainted the Sandstorm. But we're going to see the light screen come out from the Grimmsnarl here. But yeah, the Landorus is still looking in a very good position.
Certainly is, and that light screen is going to be very effective, really, in stopping that Moonblast from knocking out the Landorus. You can see there quite a pitiful amount of damage after the Max Quake as well. So just really Simone playing it safe, compounding all of his defensive options to stop him from being knocked out this turn. Could have been a critical hit, could have changed that game maybe for Giuseppe. Certainly with the Landorus out of the way, maybe the Regieleki has a little bit more room to play, especially with Helping Hand from the Whimsicott, but it's really going to be quite difficult. And you can see Giuseppe there, head in his hands. He's not in the best position. With only Whimsicott left on the field,
Yeah, Whimsicott versus the world at this point. Not even an option to Dynamax the Whimsicott on this point, unfortunately. But yeah, the Landorus just ran away with both of the games for Simone here. There wasn't really too many answers that Giuseppe had, especially after the Thunderous got KO'd immediately on that turn 1. It would have been very close without the critical hit, whether that was able to pick up the knockout, especially with the extra chip from the Life Orb and the Sandstorm. But yeah, losing your Dynamax on turn 1 is something you never want to see.
No, definitely not. And I did, wonder a little bit in that team preview whether indeed he could have gone to the game just to protect itself, or protect Giuseppe's team from that scary face drops, maybe get a Tailwind up and lose the Whimsicott, then bring in the Dracovish in Tailwind, no scary face potential. Maybe would have been, by the time you got that up, maybe the Landorus would have got 2 max airstreams off, maybe, but if it had only one, could have been enough to just launch that big old choice band Fisher's Rend into the Landorus, and then really quite free to do so into the Grimmsnarl and whatever else that Simone had on his side of the field. But yeah, Simone played game 1 really well and just took the offensive presence right off the bat and just kept that going, and got a little bit fortunate with that early critical hit, of course, in game 2. But as you said, Jamie, Life Orb chips and Sandstorm recoils may not have actually made any difference in the end. And it's just really quite a difficult match for Giuseppe to be able to win.
And it was interesting seeing so much offense come out from Simone Sanvito when we were expecting such a defensive, or much more of a defensive team coming out. So you did have those screens available from the Grimmsnarl, but we were expecting more of the offense to come out from Giuseppe's side of the field. But the Landorus was able to just put a stop to that immediately, whether that was just putting on so much pressure in that game 1 or being able to KO the Dynamax immediately in that game 2. So Simone will be the final person advancing into the top 8 for the Victory Road Spring Series. So we're going to be moving on to tomorrow for that top 8. That is going to be it from us today for this top 16. So make sure you are coming back tomorrow for the quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals of the Victory Road Spring Series Championship.